the political legislative arm, within them there should be separation. I think we've actually arrived upon a very wonderful system of checks and balances here in the U.S. I'd like to see that exported to Muslim majority, not exported. I'd like to see that evolve in Muslim majority countries. I'd like to, and I get the most hesitant, or not hesitant, fearful when I hear about experiments with implementing Sharia, whether by the Taliban or whether by Pakistan or whether by Iran or whether by now the government references in the constitution to Islam in Iraq and so forth. Because I've seen what one person's conception of what Sharia should be if it's within the same. Now people who are in these Muslim majority countries, and when they're campaigning on whatever platform, if their platform arrives out of faith, if their platforms arrives out of some other place, all of it should be welcome, but none of it should be imposed upon by any religious establishment or clergy. So there I agree with you about Sharia. But I think preaching is a different thing.
Let me just suggest a different context, and forgive my Christian-centered point of reference again, but it will help me if, Dr. Jasser, you would elaborate your powerfully made point about the insistence you're making between the private spiritual world and the public world, where you really don't want to see, as I understand you, spiritual principles imposed on the public realm or defining the public realm. And my simple question is, what do you make of the powerful use that Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement made of Christian theological references as points of liberation for African Americans, as an example?
Oh, well, that's a good question, and I think we have to be careful not to be ahistorical, meaning that there are certain principles, whether it's fighting hate, genocide, or other profound deviations in society in which faith groups need to come together. And that would not be wrong. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about governmental processes becoming intertwined with scriptural exegesis. And this is where it's dangerous. And I think the civil rights movement could have happened without the churches being a tool for that. It was very helpful. Certainly Martin Luther King used that platform. It's not wrong for him. I may not have used that platform, but that's my own understanding of my own product. You know, maybe I'm biased because of what the Brotherhood and others have done to so many innocent people in the Middle East and elsewhere, that I'm so estranged from the mixture of politics and religion. But the bottom line is that's ahistorical, because the Islamic mindset about the mixture of politics and religion is, you know, even the separation of powers concept that Bilal just gave you is a version of political Islam 3.0, where it's still built on the same infrastructure, where that infrastructure derives the Quran as the source of law, not a source of law. Very different mentality, number one. Number two is that law, when you talk, and when I talk to an imam, they basically don't care that I pray and read the Quran. They basically think I'm an atheist or an apostate, because I don't think Muslim majority countries, communities, like when the MAS has its meetings, do you guys call your board a Majlis Shura, a Shura council?
No, we call it a board of directors.
Okay. Most mosques, that's good. Most mosques call them Shura councils because they use the concept of consensus, which is Shura in Arabic, to say that, well, this is democratic. Well, we all know in Iran's a democracy. But what it is, it's a mobocracy, in which 51% of the voters become the oppressors of the society. And that what the American experiment taught us is that minorities actually have rights that can trump the majority, and that the legal system protects their rights at the expense of what the majority may rule. Why? Because at the end of the day, the Supreme Court is the final decider. And the Supreme Court's decisions are based on reason, not based on priests sitting together and saying that, well, the Bible doesn't conflict with this law, so we're going to let it pass. That's a very different concept. Let me give you alcohol, for example. I don't drink. If you believe in Sharia, you would say that Muslim majority countries should outlaw alcohol. Malaysia, even considered a moderate country, recently arrested a lady because she was Muslim and drinking, her ID says Muslim, she was drinking a beer in public and she was arrested. Well, this is absurd. I don't think it coincides with religion. And the answer to your question is that religion is only religion if you live in a laboratory where you can throw it away, decide you don't want to practice it, do what you want with it, because it's a choice. And Judgment Day to me as a Muslim only means something if I can reject wholly, God forbid, God and His Word, or if I accept it and then I've actually made a choice. And this is the part that Sharia advocates don't get. They want to create a sanitized society. They want to create a system of laws that basically says that this is God's kingdom and we are going to interpret Sharia in a consensus way, political Islam 3.0, with separation of powers, but still the source is the Quran and not common law and reason.
Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome your questions and welcome especially succinct questions. Thank you.
Two quick ones for Bilal. You mentioned that in the upcoming years, the Muslim population in America could well surpass the Jewish population. Is that something you look upon with joyful anticipation? And if so, why? And could you please comment on the activities of CARE, which was mentioned here previously? They seem to be always in combat with somebody, trying to have somebody shut down or thrown off the air or bringing lawsuits against people. Are you positively inclined towards them or not? Or how do you stand with CARE?
I am, I guess, in some emotional way, if you will. It is good to see when there's more Muslims around, not because they're more than any particular group of people, whether Jews or otherwise. I just mentioned that as a reference because I found that an interesting statistic. But sure, I mean, if I were Hispanic and I happen to be living in Boston and there's a growing population of Hispanics, then it wouldn't be strange, not expected necessarily, but it wouldn't be strange if you feel happy that there's more Hispanics, but not because it's more than Episcopals or Jews or anybody else in that sense. About CARE, I can't comment very specifically on CARE, but what do I think about them being a very active, vocal watchdog organization? I kind of think of them as akin to the ADL in many ways, in terms of what they have set themselves out to do is really be a very vocal watchdog, and they do a lot of things that similar to what the ADL or others might do in terms of being very, by some people's estimation, overly sensitive about Islamophobia and other things like that. But I consider that part of their job. So I'm glad somebody is. I don't think every Muslim should be. And that's another point that I really agree on there in terms of victimology for any group is a problematic thing. So I wouldn't want victimology to be the mindset of the average Muslim organization or the average Muslim person. But I think every minority community, at least the American experience has shows us, should have kind of a watchdog group that watches out for its rights.
Well, I think his answer to that demonstrates the problem in that rather than see the moral inadequacies of an organization that claims to represent Muslims, he wants to see them as a civil rights group. A civil rights group would stick to just civil rights, even though most of what they do includes foreign policy, domestic policy. They branch into a ton of issues. They accept foreign money. It has been shown and documented that they've done that. So there's even a question whether their foreign agent status should be looked at. So there's a big concern I have with a group that hatched out of the Islamic Association of Palestine and actually did not find a constituency large enough and ended up focusing on Islamic civil rights, even though much of their status has been in question based on their identification in the Holy Land Foundation trial as one of the unindicted co-conspirators in that trial, because they had information about the network of mosques and fundraising that's done around the United States. So as much as their intentions may be labeled as civil rights, they end up doing a number of things that I think is a liability to our community and not a benefit.